Hi friends! Today I'm gonna draw a little portrait with alcohol markers for you guys, and I thought I would walk you through it because, you know, when I was just starting out drawing portraits, I would go on YouTube and watch people do it. I think sometimes that helps me more than like a tutorial. This is kind of a tutorial, but whatever. So the first thing I do when I'm drawing a portrait is to find a reference picture. I usually go to unsplash.com because they have beautiful high quality portraits and they are all royalty free, and I never like copying the whole picture. I talked about this on another video, but I like to incorporate other elements just so it's not like a full copy of, you know, someone else's art. I liked this portrait of this girl. I like that she has a very like clean face with no makeup, and I like the position of her face like almost turning to the side but not quite, and she has like this beautiful shadows on the side of her face. For the hair, I'm kind of thinking about doing like maybe plants, so I'm just gonna look for some references of plants and see if I can find some cool plants that I like. And I like this rounded leaves. I thought it was really interesting, so yeah, I'm gonna use that as a reference. And now that I have the references, I'm gonna start sketching. I always start by drawing a big circle and then like an oval shape to mark the shape of the head. I actually have another video that I'm gonna tag here on the screen somewhere where I talk about all the proportions and angles I actually use for sketching faces, and then you can follow that along if you want, just right in the beginning of the video. I usually follow the main angles of the reference and I try to turn things into geometrical shapes, and I usually mark everything as little dots before making big decisions. And by big decisions, I mean like drawing the details of the face, slightly mark the positions of things before turning them into actual face elements. And when I'm feeling more confident with the guidelines and the proportions, I add all the details. And honestly, unless you're drawing someone famous or someone like a commission or someone that you're actually wanting to portray and you want this person to be recognizable, you don't really have to worry about being too perfect. I'm honestly not worrying about that at all. I don't really need this portrait to look like this reference. I'm just taking the proportions and the lighting, honestly, but I'm not really trying to make it exactly look like her. And again, if you're not really sure about the proportions, really pay attention to the angles of the lines on your portraits. Like, look at the jawline, look at the eyebrows, like what is that main angle that's following, and draw those angles first, and then you can turn that into an eyebrow and then a jawline. Focus on the angles first. Now I'm also sketching the leaves following my reference, and of course I don't have a reference that's gonna be exactly what I want. So some of these leaves I'm gonna draw from imagination inspired by the reference. I'm also drawing these other types of leaves that just came into my mind and they're like easy to draw. And now that I'm done with my sketch, I'm gonna outline with a 005 ink pen. I like the 005 because it's really thin, very delicate, and I don't really want the lines to show too much. Something I also usually pay attention is to only outline the lines that are very clearly visible. So if you notice here, I don't really contour the mouth completely, right? There's some places in the mouth that really blend, like the lips really blend with the rest of the face. So there's not a very clear line there. So instead of you really outlining everything, you can just outline like just the corners, maybe like the in between the lips. That's usually a very clear line. Anyway, now that I have the outline, we can erase the pencil marks, and I'm also going to choose a color scheme for this drawing, and I usually like to choose 2 or 3 tones of the same color. So in this case, I have a ton of like different beiges, as you can see. I like marking them on paper, and I don't really have much of a technique on choosing colors. I just kind of like intuitively choose them, and I try to find like a lighter tone, a darker tone, and maybe an even darker tone, depending on what I'm painting. So yeah, now that I chose a few colors for the skin, I'm going to put the base colors in. And if you want to blend, because with alcohol markers you can blend them and create like a fade fading effect from one color to another, you usually start from the darker tone and then you blend it with the lighter tones on top of the darker tones. But I don't want to blend anything today, so I'm just gonna start from the lighter tones and then add the shadows after. To do the shadows, I usually follow a reference. Like eventually, maybe one day, I'll be more comfortable to kind of create the shadows as I have it in my imagination. But at the moment, I'm not super comfortable to do that yet. I'm not that familiar with faces, I don't think, even though I've been drawing portraits my whole life. I'm not there yet. So I still need references to paint the shadows, and yeah, giving you that okay. It's okay to follow references. Now, I of course have a reference for the face, and this is gonna be the main lighting scheme of my drawings. So to make my illustration cohesive and balanced, I need to create the same type of light in the rest of it, which are the leaves. And of course, the lighting on the leaves, on my reference picture of the leaves, is completely different. So I'm just gonna mark like a little L for light and S for shadow on the corners of my paper, so I remember that this is where the light is and this is where the shadows are. And I'm gonna try to apply that same concept from my imagination on each leaf. And to define the colors of the leaves, I just couldn't decide. I was like trying out some greens and also this other like brown, beige, you know, earthy tones. And I just couldn't decide it because the green would look so nice. The contrast with the skin color would look so good, but also the earthy tones look so comfy and like warm, but also a little dry. But also green is so predictable. Like, of course, leaves are green, you know? Isn't that too basic? I don't know. This is where my mind was at. And then in the end, I kind of just flipped a coin and decided it was gonna be the earthy tones. Sometimes, yeah, you just have to take a risk, and there's not much logic behind the thought process as I would like. So now I'm adding the base colors for the leaves, and I'm using this pink that is clearly running out of ink. It's almost dry and I have all this space to paint. I got really nervous at this point thinking that I ruined the drawing, but I luckily had this water-based marker that's like almost the same color. And you're not supposed to mix alcohol markers with water-based markers, but since I'm not blending anything, it's fine. If I was blending, the water markers just wouldn't blend together and it just would look weird. But I'm not blending anything. I just need that color, that base color, so it's gonna be fine. And when I finished with the base colors, I started adding the darker tones to create a shadow effect. And again, I'm following the same shadow scheme of the face, so the shadows are more towards the right. The light is coming from left to right and hitting the elements in the page and casting a shadow on the right of everything in the drawing. So yeah, this is what I'm trying to create here. And a tip I have for you is to always maintain the darkest tone throughout your whole drawing. So like, for example, I use this dark brown on to be the darkest of dark tones of the face. So this has to be the same darkest of dark tones in the leaves. So I couldn't use like black on the leaves and then brown in the face, for example, right? Because it would just look weird. So your darkest tone needs to be the same throughout your whole drawing. I find that this creates a more like balanced and organized illustration. And of course, I can't forget the cast shadows. I usually think that they create such a beautiful contrast and depth in my illustrations. So the cast shadows are basically like shadows that are not just naturally happening because it's the farthest side towards the light. It's the shadows that happen because there are elements in front of them. So they are gonna happen in the elements in the back, the leaves that are in the back, and there's another leaf in front of it. There's gonna be like a little casted shadow, and you have to kind of like figure it out how that shadow would look like. They usually kind of follow the shape of the element in the front, but like on an angle, kind of like your shadow when you're walking on the street. It's like you, but taller, and just your shape is just not the same, but it's you. And remember to not be scared to add dark shadows. I really like creating dramatic illustrations, and the darkness creates some drama, creates some mystery. I really like it. Always see like with my students, sometimes they're scared of adding darkness. They think they're gonna ruin the drawing, but it really makes everything else pops out, right? If you have light, you have shadow, and if you have shadow, you have light. If everything is kind of like the same tone, nothing really pops out and everything's gonna be on this plane, right? Everything's gonna be more 2D. And of course, I'm not trying to make like a realistic drawing here. I'm creating the shadows much more like stylized, and I kind of like this style. But yeah, no matter what kind of style you are trying to create, don't be scared of adding dark shadows because they're going to create depth and contrast in your drawing. And this is it, everyone. This was the drawing I did the other day. I actually liked this drawing. It was supposed to be like a little study, and I ended up spending like 5 or 6 hours on it. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it helped on your artistic process. Let me know if you liked it in the comments. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out and helps the algorithm to help more people find my content. And also, if you want to watch any of my Skillshare classes, the link is in the description. And I'm gonna see you next week. Bye!